following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah, go Cowboys!
This is Mick Shots.
Streaming live on DallasCowboys.com and the official Dallas Cowboys app.
Now, here are Bill Jones, Savannah Humoller, Everson Walls, and Mickey Spagnola.
High noon on a Tuesday here inside the SWBC podcast studio at the Star in Frisco, where it is, well, it's in here, it's not 18 degrees, but outside it is, and it sure feels like it. And things are chilly in Cowboys Nation, too. Bill Jones, Savannah Humoller, Mickey Spagnola, and Everson Walls is not here today. He's got other commitments. He's decided he didn't want to talk about things today.
I think chicken. Come on.
So here we are.
I don't know if this was indicative of everything, but just as soon as you started the show up on the NFL Network was the divisional round schedule of games. It's like, okay, throw it right in our face.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
All right, so much to talk about since we weren't together. I know, Mickey, you did a joint podcast yesterday. I tuned in for some of that yesterday, and so you got things about the game that you've gotten off your chest. But new audience here for Mick Shots. Fire away.
Yeah, thanks. Open-ended, right? So as I was telling Savannah before we started that, you know, it's one thing to lose a playoff game, and then it's another thing to get beat as bad as they did. Almost not competitive. I mean, at 27-0, did you have any hopes that they were going to recover? It was somewhat reminded me of that 94 NFC NFC title game against San Francisco.
But that was 21-0 with still 55 minutes left to play of the game.
I know. That's what I said. I said, well, you know, they almost came back from that, but they still had 3.5 quarters to play. They were down 21-0. But when it got to 27-0, it was like, are you kidding me? This is not really happening.
That was also a team that had already won 2 straight Super Bowls.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, it was, you know, and I know what the feeling is out there. You know, everybody should get fired. But as I try to caution everyone that firing the head coach means you fired the offensive coordinator. And so whoever the new head coach would be better have an offensive coordinator if he's not the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. So it's not as easy as just taking off the head because there's too many other body parts that follow along with making changes. And I'm not trying to, you know, overly defend Mike McCarthy, but if you do something, then are you guaranteeing me that they're going to win 12 games next year? And you guarantee me that that change is going to win the playoff game. So you got to be careful. I think normally Jerry tries to take the emotion out of it and kind of just calm down and then look at things pragmatically before, you know, making a move or not making a move.
Right.
So I think that's kind of where we're at. But I just thought that might be the most unexpected, devastating loss that I've seen in my time covering Cowboy playoff games, and I counted them up before the game. Derek had asked me, so how many playoff games have you covered? Mm-hmm. And so I started cutting them up, and I said, well, this sounds like it's 32. I said, do I get to count the 2 I watched on TV for the NFL championship with the Cowboys and the Packers? He goes, no, you had to be there. I said, okay.
So
but this
32.
This was the most, I think. I mean, they've gotten beat bad before, right? But it was almost somewhat expected. A road game at Detroit in the 91 season when they got wiped out. They got wiped out by Minnesota that one year. It was 99, I believe.
Or 09.
Or 09, yes, sorry. I think it was 99 too, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
Because it was Terrell Owens, not Terrell Owens. It was Randy Moss, right? He was all pissed off that the Cowboys didn't draft him.
The 09 game was 34-3 at Minnesota.
Right, and then 99 would have been at Minnesota also because they were a wild card team, as I remember.
But that team didn't have the same hopes this team had this year.
No,
Definitely not.
you're right.
And it was 27-10.
And it was only 8-18, right?
Yeah.
And then in 09, they got wiped out again by Minnesota. Yeah. So, yeah, I just, this was not expected. This was not, oh, we didn't get one more play, or, oh, it was a catch, no catch, or Aaron Rodgers throwing basically a Hail Mary to set up the winning field goal. This was just a butt whipping.
So, Savannah,
After having
how was
said
your
that,
Sunday?
I had to let Mickey do his rant first, and then see where we're at. But I mean, I also knew it was the turning point in that second quarter. I was actually standing in the end zone tunnel right when Dak had thrown the interception and they ran it back in at Green Bay, and the entire Green Bay defense is just running
right at you?
right at me, right at the cameras, everything. And just the fans around me, because there were like one of the field suites and then people behind me, the amount of just screams and all the things, I just was shocked in that moment. And that's when I realized, I don't think we're coming back.
It was like watching a horror movie.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
A slow
scary.
car crash.
Right, and then got very fast right there, and then all of a sudden, okay. Here we go. So here we are, and there's are so many questions to be answered, and you have to let time pass, and where people upstairs figure things out.
Yeah. I ran into Steven yesterday, and I can't remember how it happened. And something about how's it going, and he goes hanging tight, just like that. Which was not the question to ask, right? I learned that from Bill Parcells after a loss. When we saw him the next day, he said hi, and I said hi. How's it going? He goes, not real well, just like that.
At least he was honest.
So now I've learned to just say hi to him and not ask how it's going out of just what you normally say, right? But yeah. So to me, there's always personnel questions, but then there's also, why in the world did you decide to play zone on defense in the secondary? And it seemed like they did it more than normal, from what I can tell. And my only answer to that is they were trying to hide Stephon Gilmore's injury, that they didn't want him having to play man the whole game, and not bench him and put Nashawn Wright out there to play cornerback. But it looked like they hadn't played much zone all year. I've never seen so wide open receivers in my entire life. Like, there was just missed coverages. And the worst was the touchdown pass to Musgrave, when he stood there by himself, it seeming like forever, waiting for the pass to get there, with his back to the end zone, standing still to catch the ball.
Like he's fielding a punt.
Right, yes. and all I could think of, he's got to be thinking, oh, my God, don't drop this.
And it's just a mental bust on that play.
Right.
Defensively.
Yeah, it wasn't like they beat somebody.
Right.
Or a communication mix-up.
Yeah. And it was like, but how many of those were there? And so I went back and I got the big play type things. And so they give you the top 10. 9 of them were 15 yards or more. They had a 20, a 22, a 26, a 27, a 39 and a 46.
I believe it.
You saw it, right?
Yeah.
And it was just so uncommon for that defense to give up that many big plays. And so, hand it to Green Bay. I thought they had a really good plan, and I thought they had a really good plan defensively that I think we've seen before from other teams that have beaten the Cowboys. That they're able to stop the run with a normal front, and they decided that they were going to put undue pressure on Dak Prescott. And they end up sacking him 4 times. They hit him 9 times. He was forced to run with the ball 6 times. A couple of them were good runs, but that wasn't the design play. It was because of the pressure. And he had 6 more passes defense, meaning he's trying to fit the ball into tight situations, and the passes were getting broken up. So those 2 things, I think, really held this offense down to 16 points until they decided that, okay, we're not giving up any big plays. You can gain all the yards you want, score all the touchdowns you want. We still got 48 points.
Right.
Well, the most disappointing thing for me was the play of the defense, and you could see it coming in the last month of the season. And I spent a good part of yesterday morning just trying to figure out the linebacker situation. It's bugged me the whole second half of the season,
right,
when Leighton Vander Esch wasn't replaced. And I understand that you have difficulties during the middle of the season finding players to replace other players, but those are contingency plans that you have to have in place earlier in the season too. Or was it that Dan Quinn said, hey, I can win with this, and it's successful in games where you get ahead. It's not successful in games when you get behind and teams can just run on you. But I mean, you go back and look at the linebacking depth chart on this team, and I don't look at Marquise Bell as being a linebacker. Bless his heart, I think he had a great season, moving from safety, playing linebacker for the first time in his life, and then the idea was, after Overshown went down with the injury in the preseason, that okay, he's in sub packages, he's basically replacing Overshown, similar size player. Overshown's 220 pounds, Bell's listed at 210 on the roster. But, okay, you get into a situation now late in the year against Buffalo, and the game's on the line against Miami and Detroit, and he was nicked up in one game where they were playing Jaron Kearse at linebacker alongside Damone Clark. But you basically only had one linebacker who got any defensive snaps, in Damone Clark, in the last half of the season. And the Packers, when they prepare to face, and that's why they take the football to start the game. They knew the key to this game is get ahead and stay, and then you stay ahead.
Exactly.
And so that it's a defense that is small and aggressive. And when things are going well and you got the lead in the game, it can come up with picks. It can come up with turnovers, but when you get behind and a team can just pin its ears back and run at you with a running back like Aaron Jones, slasher, who they do a great job up front as far as him being able to have holes to run through, and you've got, you look at the goal line situation, first and goal at the 1, and the Cowboys have 4. They had Parsons at left defensive end, 2 defensive tackles, Lawrence at right defensive end, and Damone Clark on the right side. And your middle linebacker is 14, Marquise Bell. You've got 6 DBs on the field on first and goal at the 1-yard line. And that's been going on here for the whole last month of the season.
Right.
And I'm going, okay. And so you don't have the personnel to stop the run, in my opinion.
And probably the same when they ran it in from 3 yards out or 9 yards out.
Or in the third quarter where you need to stop them, but they're going to run the football. And when you have, 6 DBs on the field, and then it causes problems when you're converting safeties down into the box that haven't played linebacker for a living and reading and reacting and so forth. Now, I don't know, I got as much knowledge about football in my pinky finger as the guys down the hallway do. And so there's a reason why they were doing it, but it certainly didn't work in this game.
And they tried, and I thought somewhat successfully, putting Parsons at linebacker and having a bigger front at times, but not often enough, I didn't think. And, let him run to the ball. Don't let him get overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage.
Well, I think most of these issues started being apparent in that Bills game. That's when you really saw how they played and how the run defense was. And I think we can say from the Bills, and then you go to Miami, and then from there you beat the Washington Commanders, who, that was almost a given that you're going to win that game. However, I think we almost were all fooling ourselves a little bit going into this Green Bay game.
I think what you're looking at is you go back into October, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything you're saying. At that point in the season, there are no linebackers to go find.
Yeah.
To go get.
And they tried.
And they brought Rashaan Evans in earlier.
Didn't work.
They brought Shaq Leonard in, and he wound up going with Philadelphia instead. And so those were the two at midseason that were available. To Dan Quinn's credit and the defensive coach's credit, they figured out a way to make it work and get on a roll towards the winning 7 of their last 9 games after Leighton Vander Esch goes down with the injury. But at some point, it was going to catch up with them.
So tell me if you sense a pattern here. They lost to Arizona, 222 yards rushing. They lost to San Francisco, 170 yards rushing. They lost to Philadelphia, 109, which was, they were in the game. They lose to Buffalo, 266 yards rushing. They lose to Miami, 91 yards rushing. And then they lose this playoff game, 143 yards rushing. So those are your 6 losses, 5 of them for at least 109 yards. So, and that's been their problem in the last couple playoff games too. Given last 3 playoff games, if you look at it, when they gave up 273 the 2018 season to the Rams.
Oh, okay. So you're going back to 2018.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 3 playoff
losses.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, against San Francisco last year in the playoff, it was a tight game, and they actually contained the run game.
You're right. The year before they
decently.
did. The year before they didn't.
And in fact, let's take a break and we'll come back. And I spent yesterday morning looking back at last year in the playoffs versus this year in the playoffs at the linebacker position, and I'll be able to underscore more what I'm talking about when we come back here on Mick Shots in a moment.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
We know that juicy, cheesy, grilled to perfection burger sounds amazing, but it does sound like something is missing. Pepsi, baby. The yin to this burger's yang. Burgers and Pepsi go together like burgers and Pepsi. This perfect blending of flavors makes every bite of lettuce, every sesame seed on the bun, and every sip of that crisp, refreshing, ice-cold cola a journey to Foodtopia. Burgers, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
The Medal of Honor is our country's highest military award for valor in combat. More than 40 million individuals have served in the armed forces since the Civil War. Fewer than 4,000 have received the Medal of Honor. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a place to preserve these legacies and inspire America. It's being built right next door to the Dallas Cowboys in Texas. Help us honor our country's greatest heroes. Learn more and get involved at mohmuseum.org.
Did you know that responding to one spam call can lead to more? Or that the IRS would never ask for your social security number on the phone? Beat scammers at their own game by subscribing to AARP Fraud Watch Network alerts and texts. At aarp.org/beatscammerstx, you can sign up to receive information that helps you recognize and avoid the latest scams. That's aarp.org/beatscammerstx.
Back to Mick Shots.
All right, we continue with Mick Shots on a Tuesday as we wrap up what happened on Sunday. We're going to look ahead to the offseason as well. Wrap up my thought on, we were talking about the linebacker position, and I mentioned last year in the playoffs, let's all recall that your linebackers in the playoff games last year against Tampa Bay and San Francisco, you had 6'4", 256-pound Leighton Vander Esch and 6'5", 257-pound Anthony Barr at linebacker. This year, you have 6'3", 240-pound Damone Clark and 6'3", 210-pound Marquise Bell at linebacker. So there's the marked difference in the size of the guys that you're putting out there. Trying to defend the run. And credit Clark and Bell doing the best they can, but, I just think that they were overmatched in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. Aaron Jones averaged 5.6 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns, which tied the Packers' playoff single-game record. He's now got 7 playoff touchdowns rushing, most in Packer history.
Wow.
Which means more than Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung, who are both in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, by the way.
The other thing about Vander Esch and Barr last year, they got all the defensive snaps in the playoff games last year. Clark was strictly a special teams player in the playoffs last year, so this was his first time to play defensive snaps in a postseason game.
See, and the reason we bring this up is it doesn't look like it was that significant, but it was so efficient that it was a hidden factor in the game. You know, I talked about all the big plays, right? And it was like, well, the pass defense sucked. Well, but they were running the ball effectively to keep their attention, and
right.
and they did not get pressure. Now, there was 1 or 2 plays where Parsons got there a half step late to hit Love, but he didn't get sacked. He didn't get sacked, and all of a sudden you start getting so run conscious, you're a half step slow trying to get to the quarterback. And he only got hit like, 4 times maybe? And he never really had to, I don't think he ever ran the ball. Or maybe one time because
Jordan Love.
He kneeled down for a loss of 1, or maybe he tried to run at that time. But defensively, the Cowboys had 3 quarterback hits, no sacks. So that was a continuation of what we saw down the stretch, other than the 4 sacks I believe they had against Washington. They had no more than 1 sack the previous 5 games, I want to say. And I can tell you that for sure. It was 1 against Seattle, 1 against Philadelphia, 1 against Buffalo, 1 against Miami, 1 against Detroit. And they got none in this game.
Right.
So their inability to put pressure on the opposing quarterback also showed up.
You got to give credit to Green Bay's O-line. I mean, they really did block for Jordan Love, and they gave also the ability for him to pass in those moments when they weren't running the ball. And it worked for them.
And you know what? And he was as good as advertised.
Yep.
We talked about it, right? Throwing off his back foot, reading the field. But then again, when you got guys that wide open, but he dropping the ball in the bucket, he was awfully, awfully good.
And the other thing is, it really shows, and I think this can be an encouraging thing to Cowboys fans. when you see what the Packers are able to do and the Rams were able to do as far as turning their roster over and using these young players, draft picks. I mean, the Packers had 13 draft picks this year, and 9 of them are playing primary roles as first-year players in this league. The Rams had 14 draft picks this year, and they make the playoffs. A lot of those young players, including Puka Nacua, a fifth-round draft pick, second-round offensive guard Steve Avila at TCU is one of the best young offensive linemen in the league. And when you look ahead now with this Cowboys roster and where things are right now, with guys long in the tooth at certain positions, with other guys that are younger guys who are now free agents, and what they're going to have to do in the offseason, the interesting thing about the draft right now is coming out of the COVID year, and I think one of the reasons that so many, and we saw it in last night's game where Tampa Bay, their Trey Palmer, their rookie sixth-round draft pick, has a long touchdown catch in that game. Guy got 4.3 speed out of Nebraska, and he's playing a primary role for Tampa Bay right now. I think what's happened coming out of the COVID years is you got older players coming into the draft. They had to sit out the 1 year, and they got the extra year of eligibility as well. And so there are more players that are ready to play coming into the league now during this 2 or 3 year window coming out of COVID than there were prior to 2020. And I think I don't know if the Packers or the Rams or other teams were looking at that but clearly coming into this draft, there were so many more draft prospects than in normal years. And I think it'll probably be more of the same this year as we look forward to the draft. There are opportunities to get good young players who can replace players on your roster that are at smaller salaries.
And depth in the draft.
That's right.
What Bill's talking about, like third, fourth rounds, that not everybody can be drafted in the first or second round that were prepared to play.
The other part of it is coming out of COVID, the new roster rules where, I haven't counted up, but you can go the Cowboys roster, the Green Bay roster, the Pittsburgh roster, pick a team, any team, and there are probably 75 players who were active for a game, 75 different players when you consider the elevations from the practice squad, guys getting hurt and so forth. So you take 90 players to training camp, and you might have 80 of those 90 players who actually play in a regular season game for you. And it's been a really good thing that the NFL has done in changing these, what were archaic rules in the past, where you get injured and you're out for the year. You get placed on injured reserve. Now you can come back in 4 weeks and or 8 weeks, whatever the injury requires. And so you have to have more depth on your roster. And I think that's another reason why things are so much different from the first half of the season to the second half of the season for a lot of these teams now. Why is Philadelphia so much worse now than what they were the first half of the season? Well, they suffered a lot of injuries, and they went out and got a couple of veteran guys, but maybe they didn't do such a good job on the back end of their roster as far as having guys that can step in and play.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot that goes into this that we were I was just kind of looking at the guys that actually played in games, and it'll take me a while to count it up, but I think you got a pretty good point on that. So I think that the frustrating part for the fans is they've seen this too many times, right? And like I said, going into this team had no responsibility for what happened the other 20-some years in the playoffs, right? But it's the continued frustration, I think, that has happened. I'm sure everybody's yelling, if we had a general manager, this wouldn't have happened. Well, Philadelphia had the general manager, and it happened to them. And I know Jerry does a good job of taking the brunt of the criticism, but we know that between Will McClay and Stephen Jones, that they basically are the day-to-day general managers, Jerry gets the last say, of course, but those are the guys that are doing the work, and they've been heralded, right? Everybody's, heck, just look at what the stories were going into the game, how good Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott meshed. Oh, it's a different deal. And then you lose one, and it's like, well, what the hell?
Everyone flips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And including, many members in the media, too. Everything was great. And then you lose, and it's like, well, what are they doing?
I just think it was shocking. Everyone and this fan base especially had such high hopes this season. I mean, you have these seasons going back to, with Mike McCarthy that are 12-5, and things look like they're progressing. Dak Prescott's having one of the best seasons of his careers, and I think there was so much hope going into this, especially sitting at the second seed. You're on a 8-game, win streak just this season at AT&T Stadium. You had the advantages, and then to just get blown out like that just in the first half was very shocking to the fan base, and I think that's why there's so much flip to what everyone is saying.
And I think there was also this natural reaction that, well, they hadn't lost a game at home in the last 16, and they went 8-0 this year. But as I continued to say, sometimes it matters who you play with.
Exactly. That's what we've been saying all season. I mean, if they played San Francisco and Buffalo at home rather than on the road,
they still would have got beat.
That's right.
Right?
It would have.
I mean, if you think about it, the best teams they played at home, Seattle, I don't know if you want to throw them in there. Philadelphia, and we saw
Seattle
what
did
happened
not make
to
the
them.
Playoffs.
Philadelphia, went downhill.
The start of their downfall.
Detroit, they got by 1 point. And when they played the Rams weren't playing that way. And then the other games that they won at home, the Jets, New England, the Rams, the Giants, Washington, Seattle, Philadelphia, and then Detroit. So this was technically probably the best team they played at home at this time of the season.
It's either them or Detroit.
Yeah. So.
And they may be playing each other in the NFC Championship game next week.
Go figure.
And
I mean, we'll see. Can Green Bay go to San Francisco and win?
Yeah.
I mean,
and there was
I wouldn't put anything past them.
This whole narrative about, why are you so good at home? Well, sometimes it's who you play, at least for this year. You didn't play Miami and Buffalo at home. You didn't play San Francisco at home.
So what was the Cowboys' best home win? You just listed them. Okay, the Jets 30-10, New England 38-3. Then it was the Rams 43-20, and then the Giants. What was that score? 49-17, and then Washington was 45-10. Seattle was 41-35. Philadelphia 33-13, and then Detroit 20-19. Now you look back, which was the best game they played?
Probably the Philadelphia game, but that wasn't the best
But
team.
now I'm thinking about who they're playing.
Yeah.
I think the best game they played was Detroit.
Right.
20-19.
And they barely
because
got
of
by.
the opponent. Yeah.
And I almost pinpoint the Seattle game because I think that was one of the biggest games where they were down and they were proving their ability to be able to come back and win a game. And then Seattle went on and had a great rest of their season. But I think those games after that, it wasn't until we played Detroit that we actually won against a very good winning team.
And I felt like that game they played above their heads as far as stopping the run. In that, remember, there was a lot of run blitzes and things like that.
Against Detroit?
Tackles for loss. Yeah, against Detroit. 7 tackles for loss in that game. And a lot of it was, DeMarcus Lawrence shooting a gap and tackling somebody in the backfield or whatever,
And having said that, they still ran for 125 yards.
Yeah.
But you're right, they made plays.
Mm-hmm.
This game, they didn't make plays, and I got a couple I'd like to talk about, but we're
all right. Up next, a couple more Mickey would like to talk about as Mick Shots continues.
The Medal of Honor is our country's highest military award for valor in combat. More than 40 million individuals have served in the armed forces since the Civil War. Fewer than 4,000 have received the Medal of Honor. The National Medal of Honor Museum will be a place to preserve these legacies and inspire America. It's being built right next door to the Dallas Cowboys in Texas. Help us honor our country's greatest heroes. Learn more and get involved at mohmuseum.org.
Cowboys football and Miller Lite. What a pairing. Can cracks at kickoff. Tailgates going way past postgame. Sunday night overtimes followed by Monday morning swagger. Brisket in the smoker. Miller Lite in the cooler. America's team playing America's greatest sport. Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys football tastes like Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. 2023 Miller Brewing Company, Fort Worth, Texas.
Did you know that responding to one spam call can lead to more? Or that the IRS would never ask for your social security number on the phone? Beat scammers at their own game by subscribing to AARP Fraud Watch Network alerts and texts. At aarp.org/beatscammerstx, you can sign up to receive information that helps you recognize and avoid the latest scams. That's aarp.org/beatscammerstx.
You know that sound anywhere. It's the crisp crunch of that first nacho chip. With its perfect cheese to sour cream ratio sitting atop a layer of delicious beans, it's a sip away from perfection. That's what we're looking for. Add a delicious, refreshing Pepsi and we've achieved absolute nacho nirvana. Because while you can pile those nachos high with every spicy, cheesy, savory topping, there's no topping a cool Pepsi finish. Nachos, better with Pepsi. That's what I like.
Back to Mick Shots.
And Mick Shots continues. We've got about 8 minutes left here, and then we are going to be off from Mick Shots the rest of this week, and we do it on a weekly basis starting next week.
How about this? You see that note up there?
What is that note up there that you watch the NFL Network? Jordan
Love, first player since 1950 with a 150-plus passer rating in road playoff game, 157.2. And at one point, it was perfect.
And then he threw that last pass on the.
He had an incompletion, and that incompletion dropped it a whole point. It was 158.3,
which is a perfect rating.
Incredible.
Jordan Love's going to be in the Packer Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
If he keeps playing that way, right? Okay, so, and there was just a couple plays that stood out to me. I didn't get a chance on that first series to go back and look at the illegal contact on Bland. It was the second play of the game when they had -3.
Mm-hmm.
How egregious it was. But the one that stuck out to me was the non-interference call on Jair Alexander on the interception. Yeah. And, and they kept saying on television, well, he's got the right to go get the ball, and he does. But to earn that right to go get the ball, he yanked Cooks from behind. And it should have been either a holding or a legal contact, one of the two. And they just ignored it, and it was significant, giving them the ball. What was it, 14-0, and they got the ball at the 19-yard line, and then they go in and score. That was really big. The other one, I guess it was inconsequential. The offensive pass interference on Tolbert on the 2-point conversion. All he did was run his route. And he squeezed right between two guys. He didn't block anybody. He didn't touch anybody, and they threw the flag on that. It's just these mixed crews. I just don't like it. I do not like it because I think everybody's trying to show that how much they know by throwing flags.
Well, how about Micah Parsons finally drawing a holding call?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them, maybe.
Not once, but twice.
Twice.
Well, when you get tackled from behind and the guy's riding piggyback on you, it's kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah. Well, it was time that was,
I love his
broken.
His take
season.
on it, that the officials tell him, well, you were so far out of the play, you couldn't make that play. And his response is, how do they know I can't? I can make plays that normal people can't make. Don't tell me what I can't make.
That's
right. So anyway, I was going to throw that out there.
So what do you think about this off season coming up now?
Well, my count, they got 16 unrestricted free agents, including the deep snapper, who was pretty darn good.
Our star of the game?
Yeah. All his snaps have been perfect this year, which is rather remarkable that they were able to pick him up off the free agent wire, or sign him, I should say. Yeah, it's got a lot of work to do. And one of the things, we've already discussed linebacker, right? You got to figure out running back, and you got to figure out cornerback.
And you got to figure out offensive line.
And offensive line.
And who's going to play.
Mr. Newton pointed out yesterday
I missed that.
Well, he was talking about don't be afraid to use the 24th pick in the draft on an offensive lineman.
Well, and we don't know yet. I mean, there's a couple of them that are long in the tooth.
Yes.
Tyron and Zach.
Right.
And
you better be prepared, right? Mm-hmm. Not just assume you got a game or two out of TJ Bass.
Right. Even if you have them under contract, even if they are playing,
right,
you have to be prepared in case of injury.
Right.
When Tyron is 33, and Zach is also 33.
Right.
So Zach actually a couple of weeks older than Tyron.
Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm. Even though he was drafted 3 years later. It's just amazing.
Tells you how young.
20-year-old Tyron.
Yeah.
Savannah Tyron did not turn 21 until December 12th of his rookie season. That's how young he was when he came into the league in 2011.
So, and Nate,
his contract is up.
Yeah.
And Nate was right yesterday. They got to decide, is Tyler Smith your guard, or is the tackle? Is he the inherited tackle on the left side? And then just wherever you do, leave him there. Don't keep rotating or shuffling. And if that's the case, then who's your guard?
And then Tyler Biadasz is also a free agent.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of changes to be made in this offseason for sure, and a lot of rebuilding in those structures for a lot of position groups.
And I saw Connor McGovern pretty prominent last night for Buffalo. He kind of got in a little scrum on the sideline there, but he's starting, playing well. So yeah, you got to be very judicious what you do on this offensive line. Running back, you got to draft one, don't you?
Right, because you obviously Pollard and Dowdle are both out there.
And, I don't know what other people think of Pollard. And even if you brought him back, you still need another guy. Cornerback is, I think Gilmore wants to play.
Jordan Lewis.
Lewis is up. And then you got Trayvon and coming back from a torn ACL. Mm-hmm. So if
you took care of at safety, you took care of Malik Hooker and of course Donovan Wilson last year.
Right.
So they're under contract, and
Curse is up.
So,
yeah, cornerback position. You can't just assume Trayvon comes back as the same Trayvon right off the bat. By 100%. The way, now you got Bland, and that's good. I think Gilmore said that he wants to play another year, but he's got to have shoulder surgery.
And you bring it back to linebackers. Van Der Esch, obviously, with his injury situation. And you got Clark coming back. You got Overshown coming off an ACL coming back.
And that's going to take that'll take development for Overshown as well, because he's just He hasn't done anything.
Right.
So it's going to take a lot of development time for him.
Got a lot of needs coming up here.
It's always amazing to me that you get in the playoffs and whatever kind of wart you covered up during the regular season gets exposed in the playoffs because now you're playing the best teams in the league. And it happened. And here we are, right?
How'd we do in our picks last week? I know we missed one game.
How about the rest of the league?
Yeah. Our picks.
I know I got the Saturday games right, Houston and Kansas City. And I think we were split on Houston and Cleveland.
I picked Houston.
I picked Houston also.
I think I picked Cleveland.
I picked Houston. I picked the Steelers. So that didn't work out for me.
Yeah. And then
who else?
I can't remember if I picked the Rams or the Lions.
I picked the Rams.
I may have picked the Rams.
I think I did too.
And then, well, of course, we all in unison picked Tampa Bay over Philly.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
And Everson missed them all, by the way, since he's not
all
here.
right, so as we close it out, who's winning this weekend? You got the first game on Saturday is Houston at Baltimore. I like Baltimore. I really like C.J. Stroud, but Baltimore's going to win that game, in my opinion. The other AFC game is Kansas City at Buffalo.
Buffalo.
I'll go Buffalo. So you got a Buffalo at Baltimore AFC Championship game, which we'll reconvene next week. So we'll talk about it. NFC, Green Bay at San Francisco on Saturday night. Are you going to pull the trigger on it?
San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm going San Francisco. And the other game is now Tampa Bay at Detroit.
Detroit.
So we got a San Francisco, Detroit at San Francisco NFC Championship game.
How about cooler heads prevailing, not trying to play that damn game in Buffalo the day before?
Oh, yeah.
And it took the governor probably to say, no, we're not doing that, right? Because she didn't want all her first responders and police, as she said, taking care of 70,000 people trying to get into a
that would
stadium.
Have been impossible,
right?
There's no way.
That was one case with what was going on on Sunday that could not have been played.
So would you have gone over there with a snow shovel for
no.
$20 an hour? I'd have done it.
There's some people that are going to go out there and do it.
I wouldn't go in my driveway. That's what Zoom is for.
I told somebody, I said, I used to get $2 an hour to shovel driveways.
No.
The problem was the report time. What time you had to show up?
What time was that?
Midnight.
Because they
start
wanted
shoveling?
you to do it all through the
report
night.
At midnight to shovel through the night. So basically, you're working the overnight shift at the stadium with the lights on.
I'd have got there at 7 in the morning, but not at midnight.
People would do it just to say that they did it.
Yeah,
I got to be a part of that.
Experience of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I did think it was funny that the little ad they put out. It says, "In the morning, we'll give you a free hot breakfast in a warm area."
In a warm area.
like there's a warm area anywhere in Buffalo.
Yeah. But they did a pretty good job.
Yep, they did.
Really?
They
cleared the walkways.
They cleared the field.
Well, come on, the field. I'm talking about the stands that they were really there for the clear.
The touchdowns though, when the fans were throwing up the snow, that was cool. That was pretty cool.
I did think it was funny that your ticket doesn't mean where you sit, right? It was open seating. Did you know that?
Oh no, I didn't.
There's no way you could find.
I kept hearing that.
Brushing off
it was
the
open
snow on
seating,
your
so
seat.
if you get in the stadium, it's general admission. So wherever you can find a seat, sit down.
Mm-hmm. Sit down on the snow.
Except for that second level where the heaters are.
Yeah.
You notice that? Right?
Yeah. That's the best seat in the house.
Yeah. Well, that's why you got suites behind them.
All right. Well, that does it for Mix Shots for this season. And we turn our attention to 2024 next week on the next edition of Mix Shots.
Go Cowboys.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys? Yeah!